Welcome to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Leah Lambert, career and interview coach and founder of Relaunch Me, where we help you find the work that you were meant to do. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. Today, we're diving into one of the most important yet most avoided skills that can really make or break someone reaching their career and lifestyle goals, and that is negotiation skills. In my coaching sessions, I meet so many really competent people who struggle to ask for what they want, whether that's a pay rise, a change in workload, flexible working arrangements, or even just a conversation about a change in their job title. And these are often more than often, successful, really talented people who excel at work, but just hesitate when it comes to advocating for themselves. So, to help unpack why this happens and what we can do about it, I am thrilled to be joined by Sam Trattles. Sam is a commercial negotiator, she's a speaker, and she's the founder of The Other Side of the Table. Sam believes that negotiation is simply a conversation, not something reserved for high-stakes boardrooms, and her work has helped thousands of people build confidence in asking for what they want. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Leah. Excited to be here.
I'm sure the work that you do, Sam, could help so many people out there listening today. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come and join me.
Pleasure.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of negotiating, would you like to share briefly your career story and how you came to work in this space?
Yeah, it was a long journey. I've been privileged to work in Australia and the UK and in South America and, have had incredible roles. But I think I spent quite a lot of those roles not thinking that I was ready for them. But I had a philosophy of always say yes. So it took me to all these wonderful places and I worked in marketing and I had always worked in marketing and then specialized in sponsorship. So was the head of sponsorship for PwC and then into Telstra, which were amazing roles. And sponsorship is, an exchange in value. And that was a lot of negotiating. And I saw a lot of things that were not beautiful, not well behaved and not well handled, but I saw some incredible stuff as well. So when I departed the corporate world about 10 years ago, I started to think, well, I love strategy and I love negotiating. Could you build a business around that? And at that time, there was probably only 3 in Australia. There's not many of us still, but it's been my privilege to actually learn how do I translate what I knew in corporate life and commercial negotiations and translate that to everyday negotiations, everyday leadership challenges. And so have evolved the business there. And I think I've done my apprenticeship now and starting to evolve the business now into a very different direction, which is around this, how do you ask for what you want? So, it's emboldening the idea of the power to ask.
Yes, and I believe it's something that as a child, we're asking for things that we want all the time, aren't we? But it's probably conditioned out of us at some point where people say, no, don't ask, just get back in your box. And I think we stop asking and we've got to really build that muscle back up.
100%. So a lot of it stems from childhood, as you say. It's about that good girl, good boy syndrome. And, if you're a good girl or you're a good boy, then you'll get this and you'll get rewarded for that. And then you end up in a corporate environment where you are looking to someone to say, am I doing a good job? So it's compounding that. So, from a very young age of being totally curious to teenage years where you're not really sure where you fit, to a young career person who's sitting there going, oh, everybody's older than me, so they must be wiser than me. So I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak up. To when we get to that middle management and starting to take care of people, it's like, oh, am I the grown up here? So really trying to work out, okay, at what point do I bring back my curiosity and start to ask for things and push the limits a little bit and try and find the fun in that as well, which can be stressful, but there are ways and levers to pull that mean that it is de-escalating that pressure.
Sam, can you just share some examples just to give us an understanding of what you do, some examples of how you've helped clients negotiate to get what they want?
So everybody's situation is quite different and we're all facing different challenges, and that does depend on where we are in our seniority level. But it could be as simple as going for a pay rise. It could be a new salary package. But in other more important things, it's about how do I influence people and outcomes. So am I influencing my staff, my team only, or am I influencing my team, cross-silo, leadership, boards, suppliers, internal and external, all these layers that we don't think we're negotiating, but we are constantly negotiating. And if we don't have an efficient process, then that's exhausting. So I spend all these hours every day just fighting fires and I'm tired. So it's about that place to go, hang on, I'm not doing the same job I was doing 5 years ago. So what do I need now to actually make my job easier and make myself feel like I'm making progress by empowering the people around me?
In most roles, as we become more senior, I believe, influencing is a key skill that we need to have. And it's obviously asked when people go to interviews at all levels, particularly those senior levels, they're often asked for an example of when they've successfully influenced someone. Do you see a real difference between influencing and negotiation, or are they the same?
It's an interesting question. I think it's integrated. I think that is a connected thing. Negotiating is a process, influencing is an outcome. And, some people, old style leaders were like, well, I'm in a position of power, so I have the authority here. So everybody will just fall into line. Thank goodness we don't work with many people like that anymore. So now it's a case of saying, well, who am I really following? In a world that is all about belonging and being part of different groups around our work and life, who do I want to follow? And I always loved when I had a great boss, no matter how insane the team was, the business was, or, what was going on around the organization. If I had a great boss, that's who I followed. And, that's the situation that you're in. It's like, well, who's an incredible leader and what makes up that skill? And I think it's that ability to communicate well, to help people understand this is where we're going to, and this is why you're important to deliver on that. So, it is that holistic leadership.
Yeah. Okay. And why is it so? Whether it's, negotiating a pay rise, a promotion, or even trying to set clear boundaries, why do you think it is that people get so uncomfortable with negotiating and asking for what they want?
It could be a combination of things. It can be history that you've been told, oh, that's a bit much or whatnot. But a lot of the time is we just didn't learn how to do this. It's not part of Australian culture. First time a lot of people negotiate or really ask for something is when they're traveling or on the beach in Bali and saying no to something. And so it's not been fostered. And so it's terrifying. And it's totally understandable, but we need to change that. We need to believe that relationships are strong enough to handle a bit of robust debate. I did debate at school. I don't know why we don't debate in the workplace so that we can get the best outcome. But we've created these environments that are often really polite. And then when we really need something, it's like, oh, you're a bit difficult. I was nicknamed the bulldog at one point, and that was not a compliment. And but what the meaning is that I will do what it takes, but I needed to find how do I deliver that in a way that was people could hear me. So changing the concept around from this is what I want to this is how we get it together, and having those conversations so that it's people are being heard.
Interesting that you should mention the bulldog. So one of the questions I'm interested in asking you as a career coach, I do a lot of work with personality assessments and understanding people's natural strengths and weaknesses. And you would know the Myers-Briggs. There's, the thinking versus feeling. So you've got people who are more analytical, who like base decisions on logic and fact, tends to be often very results focused, probably more direct with their communication. And then on the other side, we've got what I call the helpers, very service driven, like to please, very focused on relationships and often avoid those difficult conversations. I'm just curious, in your experience, do you see these sort of patterns in the people that you work with?
It's one of those things that what stops us from asking is what we default to. So am I a people pleaser? Do I have imposter syndrome? Am I a workhorse? And really those three saboteurs, I like to call them, really hold us back, because there's the imposter syndrome is a negative voice, but there's also a positive voice in there. And you've got to listen to the positive voice a bit more to say, hang on a minute, where's the evidence that I shouldn't be speaking up, or I shouldn't be, or by speaking up, I'm going to rock the boat. So I believe that any personality can be good at negotiating because it's a process, and making sure that you understand, okay, this is how I unpack it, but this is how I do it that works for my personality. So, you're not going to stand up there and become a gunslinger, change your personality and go, yeah, I'm tough and I'm going to negotiate. It's like, no, don't do that if you're not that type of person. So, winding the truck back to think, hang on, what's our vision of a good negotiator? And, the top 50 movies, when you put it into Google, there's only 3 of them that have women in them. There's only 7 of them that are not about hostage situations. So really starting to take some time to think, well, hang on, who is a good negotiator that I admire? What's their style? Are they aggressive? Not always. I'm not aggressive. It's a tactic that I can use, but it's not how I come out of the gates. So, really working to your strengths and your capabilities is all about this. You learn your Myers-Briggs. Okay, what am I going to do about that? How does that influence how I talk and speak and ask for things? So really playing into what you know about yourself.
Yeah, and I know you've written a book about this, haven't you? About different personalities, but comparing your negotiating style to different animals. Is that?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So the second book that I wrote, Negotiate Your Worth, which is, it's actually for business owners, but it is translatable, the attributes of, characteristics of powerful negotiators. So, for example, curiosity is key. So emus are very curious, and their behaviours are quite incredibly close to how humans should behave when we're thinking about how to be curious. So not going after everything, and then the various animals from there.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I know that I would definitely not be the bulldog, that's for sure, because yeah, definitely not necessarily my strength in the past. Let's talk about salary negotiations. I guess in the work I do, that's probably the most typical conversation that people have to have that often feels uncomfortable. Let's start with internal salary negotiations. So if someone was out there in their current role, feel like they're not getting paid what they're worth, what would your advice be in terms of the steps that they could take to prepare for those conversations?
Yeah, it's one of those things where we go, okay, I know that I want to have this conversation, but when am I doing that? And am I kicking the can down the road? Is this a conversation I should have had 2 years ago? So maybe I'm a little bit annoyed. And am I annoyed at the business for not actually tapping me on the shoulder and saying, hey, it's your time? Or am I annoyed at myself because I didn't make the time to understand the policy and the process? So, always starting with the process and policy, understanding what are the rules and guidelines that the business has given for when it's time, or how do you ask for a pay rise or a promotion. And then once you're at that place, it's, a case of side by side. This is my job today versus what I was employed for. And then I'm going to start a conversation today. So say pay reviews are February, March, today. We need to have that conversation today. If you want to exponentially increase your chances of a pay rise in March, start the conversation today, because then it gives someone time, a manager time to go, oh, I wasn't expecting that, because they're never expecting it for some reason. And then seeding the idea and then starting a conversation. So how are we going to get me there? So it's not, hey boss, here's your problem. It's, hey, I actually think my job's changed. What do you think we need to do to make sure that can be recognised in March?
Yeah, so that's sort of more collaborative approach and not springing it on them in the meeting.
Absolutely, because by the time March rocks around, it's too late. All the conversations have been taking place in those higher levels. So you don't want to miss the boat. It's really, you need to be part of the process.
That's right. And some organizations, like pay reviews and performance reviews, don't always go hand in hand, do they? Are you able to explain that a little more to people?
I haven't been in those environments very often, because I think that they've always been intrinsically linked with my experience. But I think that you're never going to be in an exact cycle. So you might have had a crack a year, but then the review process is only just starting. So it's about us taking notes of the things that we achieve throughout the year to be able to have that that conversation when that time comes, but also highlighting it. This is the big thing. Self-advocacy is challenging for some people, but I know I worked with a guy, I won't say his name. I worked with a guy who we had the same trajectory, and I used to get so annoyed because everybody would be like, blah, blah, blah is amazing, and he's done this, and he's done that, and I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And then when I looked back on it, I was like, oh, God, I'm the fool. I should have been promoting all the incredible stuff that me and my team were delivering as well. I just saw that as bragging when it actually wasn't. It was really just saying, hey, look at us. We're doing some amazing stuff over here, and we're proud of it. And I want you to know that you should be proud of the stuff that we're doing on behalf of this organization as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that visibility, it doesn't, I think a lot of people think their work will just speak for itself, but it's not actually the way things work.
No, not at all.
Can we talk about the external recruitment process? And I'm sure this is one that you work with people a lot of job seekers. I guess first challenge is that job seekers have is that often they're asked for their salary expectations very early, even in the application process. And I think you and I share the same view on this, that it's very difficult to say what your salary expectations are without actually understanding more information about the role. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think it's a fair question for employers to ask?
I think it's a cheeky question. I think it's I'd always ask it because, someone will tell me and it's like, oh, okay, you answered the question. But I would never suggest to anybody to answer that question because one, it's hard in the AI world. How do I tell a robot what I'm trying to say? And there's no context of that whatsoever. So, when the box says, what are your salary expectations? I always put 1 or a dot or whatever's the least thing I can do. And that could cost you that next round. But I think that it would probably force someone to message you and say, oh, you seem to have filled out the form wrong. So I think finding a way that you don't have to answer that question early. Then one of the earlier questions for them is, well, what's the business case been signed off as? And what is involved in this role? And I've done my research on what I'm worth based on what's happening out there in the world. But I'm here. This is a very different business, very different role. And how are they creating that role? So are they creating a role that sits in a box, or are they creating a role that's for me, that's designed based on my experience and what I bring to the table? So there's no way we can just say, oh, my expectations are blah, because they're not. They're not that expectation, because I need to understand where this fits and how do you go about building a job and a business and a team.
Exactly. And what about your thoughts on in the recruitment process in terms of where those salary discussions should be raised and whether, I guess I always have a bit of a view that I would sort of wait until someone's the preferred candidate or they know that they're the preferred candidate to start discussing salary or to ask for an increase, etc. What are your thoughts on that? I guess also we don't want people to be wasting a lot of time going through a very long recruitment process only to find that there's a 50K discrepancy at the end. What sort of advice would you give your clients?
Yeah, I think we're all humans and we want to cut to the chase as soon as possible. And so making it clear very early, it's like, oh, okay, can you give me an indicator of what's the range? So I have been called up by recruiters and headhunters before and saying, oh, would you be interested in this job? And it was a particular role where I was looking after, sponsorship portfolio, but they wanted me to do a sponsorship and digital role. And so to me, I was like, oh, this is good. This is going to pay, maybe 1.5 times what I'm paying. It's not going to go a double, but, I did have hopes. And after much tussling of me asking the recruiter to tell me what the number started with, she was very resistant to telling me that at all. And I said, look, I'm happy in my job. You've called me with an opportunity, and so I need to know whether it's worth any of our time. And so does it start with X? And then when she said no, she laughed and I said, oh, okay, that tells me everything. It's not even worth getting into a conversation because I'm poles apart from where you are. So there are ways to ask these questions. It may feel like you're blowing it up, but if you blow it up, then maybe it was never meant to be anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing worse than going through 5 or 6 steps in the process only to find that they're never going to pay anything like what you need.
That's right. Yeah.
What about, Sam, in terms of negotiating workload and boundaries, etc.? I meet with so many clients who are working 70, 80 hours a week, and it's just not sustainable, but they've sort of got themselves into this trap where people just expect them to do it. Do you work with clients to help them negotiate workload and boundaries?
Yeah, absolutely. And my first question is, how did we get here? And is this about the workhorse? Because you said there that, it's what people expect of me. Why do they expect that of me? Because I am the reliable one. How did I get to be the reliable one? Oh, because I have not set my boundaries. And maybe that started with I did have strong boundaries and then they got eroded. Oh, could you just do me a favor, mate? Oh, could you just do this? And could you just. And so over a period of time, particularly when you've been in a job for a really long time, that's when this whole erosion of boundaries is evaporated. So then we need to just rebuild and reestablish. So for me, everything to do with negotiating and asking for what you want starts with you. So we need to get clear on, okay, hang on, where's my conviction around this? Do I understand that I have stopped communicating what I need? So let's start with that. What are your boundaries? Do you need to be somewhere for somebody? Even if you're a single person who doesn't have a pet to take care of, it's irrelevant. There's different people with different scenarios, and it's like, well, they've just left because they have to go and pick up the kids. Why not have that situation? So, trying to make sure that we are setting ourselves up for success. And then we need to go through a period of explaining to people, I know I used to do that, but that's not going to happen anymore. And so that takes time. That does take effort to really shift that. But I love working with people like that because the transformation is epic and they start to love their job again and people start to expect different things from them. So if we don't do that, then we start to quietly quit at some point, get annoyed and walk out. And we may really love the environment. We just needed to change it.
And I so agree, Sam. And often they leave, and then because of their personality, they like to please, and are often people who, they're born to service others, and they fall into the same trap.
Yeah. But we're not in service. That's the thing. When we want to make people happy, that's lovely and amazing. But we need to make ourselves happy first.
Yeah, put yourself first. Yeah, I might start practicing that with my children. Wind the folding, washing, and all those
Yeah.
back a bit. Sam, for anyone who's out there who is really keen to build their negotiation skills and learn some strategies, are there any books or tools or resources that you could recommend as a starting point?
Yes. So as a starting point, we have a free assessment. If you go to our website, thepowertoask.com, they can take the free assessment there. And now that will unpack it, that answer a series of questions about what stops them from asking. So the thing is, you know what you want. It's the asking for it bit without blowing up the relationship or feeling like you're being difficult or pushy. That's what we want to get to. So through that process, you'll get a report and then that talks about the saboteurs. So what's the most influential saboteur in your world? And then what can you do about that? So that's the first starting point for everybody. And it's really interesting, similar to what we were talking about before, is like, I just need to know more about myself so that I can work out what do I do about that once I know.
Perfect. Any books or anything else out there that you know of that would be a good resource?
Well, I have 2 books. So I have 2 books. One is it's I Love Negotiating with hate crossed out. And that was the first book I wrote. And really what I tried to do there was translate what I had learnt in those commercial environments to my everyday. So, it's about understanding what type of negotiator you default to and then a series of activities to go and do. So it could be practicing buying a new fridge or a wedding dress or a watch or whatnot. So there's a lot of practical things in that book. And then the second book was my COVID project, so Negotiate Your Worth. So that's written for business owners around our worth and how do we have conversations like that. So, but there are a lot of books out there in terms of leadership and influence, but I think, I've niched into this world around asking because there's only a lot of American style. British style does translate, but not if you're an FBI agent or a CIA agent. So, I've come from corporate roles where I've had to navigate lots of different things. I was just lucky that I had exponential training in, negotiating coalface.
Amazing. And people can purchase those from your website?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So if someone was interested and needed some support negotiating flexibility, pay, or other things, how can they contact you?
Yeah, either through LinkedIn or through the website directly. Happy to have a chat, just jump on and dispel a few myths first of all, and then work out, okay, what's going on and how could I help? So as you can tell, I love this stuff. So because I really think it has a huge positive impact on not just your bottom line, but also your happiness and how you can, navigate Christmas conversations with the family and things like that as well. So yeah, I'd
Yeah,
love to chat. Yeah.
like, it's just such an amazing work skill, but also a life skill. And when we think about all the different environments that we need this skill, like, it's amazing the work you do. So thank you so
Thanks,
much for
Leah.
joining us today. And I'm sure people have really gained a lot. So I really appreciate your time, Sam.
Beautiful. Thanks, Leah. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Relaunch Your Career. If you did, please subscribe, share with your friends, leave a review, or connect with us on social media at Relaunch Me Career Consulting. If you have any questions about the episode or the work that we do, then contact us via the website relaunchme.com.au. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.